Okay, so I want to start off with something that I call the car park analogy, or maybe it should be car park anomaly. Let me explain. It's when you drive into a car park and it's empty, maybe two or three cars, but like 100 empty spaces. What happens? This is what happens to me. And this has happened to me many times in my driving career. You drive around for ages thinking, where's the best spot to park? And you just can't decide. No, let's go over there. Oh, maybe I should park next to that. No, because they might scratch me when them. And you just go round and round forever. Whereas if you go into a really busy car park and there's like one or two spaces free, you know where to go. And you're in, done, dusted, up the car and doing what you wanted to do. Too much choice. Look what it does to you.
That makes so much sense. So what you are saying is too much choice is a bad thing?
Or to put it another way, if you only have one choice, your decision is easy.
Or your decision is forced.
This isn't a podcast with all the answers.
It's a conversation about figuring things out as you go.
From two very different generations.
With Michelle R. Williams
and Nick Hirst.
Welcome to Life Happens. So, talking about choice, you made the choice of going on a holiday. So we are recording after quite some time because you made this amazing choice. I mean, yeah, good for you. How was it?
So we went to Luxembourg, which is just next door from where we are here in Brussels, and 2.5 hour drive down the motorway and then through some rather intricate sort of mountain roads once you get into the Ardennes in the southern part of Belgium and then the northern part of Luxembourg. And it gets very attractive. So, yeah, it was just a couple of nights away, staying in a hotel with a spa. So we had a spa day. Plus, we went to visit, on the first day we arrived, we went to a little town called Vianden in northwestern Luxembourg, pretty much on the Luxembourg-German border. And it's a very pretty little old town. It's one of these European places, and I know you'll be familiar with them because there's lots in Czechia that make you think you're walking through a fairy tale, fairy tale land, all those old buildings. And on the top of the rocky hill in this town is a very spectacular castle, Ganden Castle. It's one of the famous castles of Europe, in fact, and certainly the most famous in Luxembourg. And you can go around, you can visit it. And you just follow the signs, basically. It's not a conducted tour. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I do love an old castle and an old building. Anything that's actually older than me. And this goes back... This goes back about
which is not much.
yeah, I have to find these old castles to find that.
I had to. So much, you just walked into that.
I kind of set you up, I think. Anyway, so did that, and then went to a lovely old restaurant right by the river, at the bottom of the hill, under the castle. You can see the castle from the windows of the restaurant. Café du Pont, give them a shout out there. And then went on to Clairvaux, another of these attractive little towns, again with the castle, not quite as big or spectacular as Vianden, and stayed in a hotel there, as I say, and had a spa. So it's interesting because I'd been sort of researching this at this break. I must have done this last year, actually. And so, looking online at all the possibilities, and there are quite a few around there. And then, of course, at the end, you're sort of thinking, have I made the right choice? And it's done through a website where you've got free cancellation up until about 2 days before you're due to go. So that gives you the possibility of changing your mind and choosing to go somewhere else. And I was still sort of agonizing about it right up till when we left. And in the end, and I did it, I did go and look online a couple of weeks before we were due to go and see, are there other possibilities there? And should I change the booking? And then in the end, I went through looked at so many different places, both in north of Luxembourg, which I know because I've been to Luxembourg before and I know it to be very attractive, or south of Belgium, also the Ardennes, all this very hilly, foresty area. But in the end, I didn't change the booking. I stayed with my original choice, and it proved to be absolutely a winner. It exceeded expectations. So that was a relief. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The multiplicity, it's a good word, of choice that we have in this digital world. You know, you can go online and have choice in everything. What I've been talking about is just choice in finding the right hotel to stay at, the right mini break, if you like. But it applies to pretty much everything.
It does. And, like the point of all of this is literally the same. It doesn't matter what you are choosing, but you just made it very clear how actually hard it is to choose something when you have so many options, because that sounds like the perfect example of the paradox of choice.
The paradox of choice. That's a very grand title. Sounds like an essay title. What is it? What do you mean by that?
It's nothing great. I think it's actually quite simple. It just has a fancy name, but basically it means that more options don't increase happiness, even though that's something you would imagine would happen. Basically, more options only increase comparison and regret. Because when you choose one option out of 5, you will forever be thinking about the 4 that you didn't choose. While if you only have one option and you choose it, you're like, yeah, I mean, that's cool that happened. I had only one option. So that sounds exactly what happened with you and your holiday.
It kind of is, because there was one other place that I was actually going to book first. And then I found this second one. And there were little things that I could compare between the two to make a decision. So eventually I made my decision for whatever reason. But of course, I was forever wondering whether it was the right one. And so I was vindicated in the fact that we had a really great time and it was better than expected. And, all aspects were better. That it wasn't just the hotel. The hotel was very good, and it delivered. It had a very good spa, but also restaurants that we went to, castles that we went to, all of this kind of stuff. It all added up to a good experience. But of course, there was that certain sort of, phew, at least I don't have to now be wondering, could it have been better?
Yeah.
It might have been, but on the other hand, we had a great time, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but if you didn't, and if you knew that if you chose differently, it would be better, you would spend the whole time during the holiday and the whole time after that thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I had chosen the other option. And that goes with everything. But if the situation was someone comes to you and they're like, okay, you will go to Luxembourg this weekend. And that's just the only option. I mean, otherwise you can stay home, but you will just do that. And it would, I don't want to say it would be terrible, but it wouldn't be as great. You would be like, yeah, I mean, I had no other option. It wasn't that bad, and you would be fine with it. But if it was terrible and you had this idea of something else being better, you wouldn't enjoy it at all. And that goes with everything. And it's I don't know, it's weird. I still don't have my decision about if more choice is better or not, honestly. And I'm not sure I will by the end of this episode.
It's a big subject. It may even spill into 2 episodes. Who knows? Just this whole phenomenon has become something of a psychological topic now. And by which I mean psychologists are analyzing this concept. And I should ask you, actually, that phrase, the paradox of choice, is that yours, or did you get it from your research?
No, it's definitely not mine. And I'm glad you are asking that, because I don't want to come across as it's my idea. No, it's just what you call it. I'm not sure if it's like something people are saying or if it's an official scientific name of it. I really have no idea.
Okay. And here's something I didn't come up with. I'm actually going to attribute it. I've got a quote from a psychologist called Barry Schwartz, who wrote, and I quote, "Consistent with the evidence that choice is not an unmixed blessing, results have begun to appear in the literature on human decision-making to indicate that adding options for people can make the choice situation less rather than more attractive. That indeed, sometimes people prefer it if others make the choices for them.
Could you maybe put it more simply, this whole quote?
Basically, the evidence is that there's too much choice and lots of people prefer it if somebody just tells them what to do.
This is literally this is probably for the first time in our podcast, or maybe in general, when I'm like, I really don't have an opinion, not in the way to like, oh yeah, I don't care, but in the way that there are so many details that I keep just going over. And we will get to some more practical examples later. So I really think that my answer depends on that. In general, if I think that someone else making a choice for me is something that's good for me, no. I like to make my own choice based on maybe others' suggestions. But the idea of someone else making the final decision for me just really don't sit right with me. So that's for the first part. And what was the other question?
Or is it exhausting to have too many choices?
It is. It is so exhausting, and it's overwhelming. That's probably the right word I would use, because it's overwhelming. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That just means that, as I'm saying, I'm literally like in the middle of like all of these things. But in general, I think the exhausting and overwhelming feeling is worthy having so many options.
Yeah. I mean, if we go back to the idea of somebody just tells you this is what you're going to do, takes the whole choice element out. I mean, basically that is controlling. It's controlling you.
Of course.
And certainly
It
if you're
depends on like, like if it's a choice, because if someone does that, like someone comes to you and they're like, okay, you will do that. You still kind of have the choice to accept it or not. But even that doesn't really sit right with me. Like just the idea of someone coming to me being like, oh yeah, you will go to this school. And I mean, I can say no or yes, but just it's the principle of it. Like, I just don't like your attitude with that. You know what I mean? So, but people are so different. And I seriously can imagine someone being happy about that. Someone needing someone else to make important choices for them. And that's all right.
No, and I think that there are definitely, everyone is different. So some people would prefer it.
Yeah.
If someone makes the choice for them. I think you and I fall into the opposite category in that we probably would prefer to make our own choices. But we are both, to use your attractive expression, grown-ass adults. And therefore...
My favorite expression, yes.
It is one of them, yes. There are a few choice ones. But we prefer that kind of freedom of choice, even if it creates its own problems and makes us sort of dither and worry. Oh, did I make the right choice? But in that, what you were saying, you mentioned school, and of course, when we're young, when we're kids, when you're like 4 years old, you can't sort of respond to your parents if your parents come to you and say, "Okay, now what school would you like to go to?" You're 4 years old. You've no idea.
Yeah.
All you've got to know is that one day you've got to go to school. And that's that. A school is a school. It's a big building with teachers and lots of other pupils. And that's it. I don't know if I ever told you about my problems going to school. And it's not really a choice thing, but I spent the first 4 years of my life, my parents saying to me, one day you'll go to school. One day you'll go to school. It's going to happen. One day you're going to go to school.
Warning.
And then sure enough, it came along. And because of my age, I'm born in the end of May. So it just meant that when I started school in September, I was one of the youngest. So I started at age 4.5 at my first proper school, what you would call an elementary school. And I went to school. My first day at school, uniform, because English schools, you always have a uniform. Some photographs outside the house in my uniform. Fantastic,
Wait.
What?
A photo, by the way. 'Cause I need to see that.
No idea. Maybe packed away in a box in one of my houses, but I have no idea.
I would love to see that.
I can picture it now. And also a little cap as well.
The youngest Peaky Blinder.
It's a sort of Peaky Blinder type cap. Yeah, now you mention it. Anyway,
Love
so
that.
then that was my first day of school, quite memorable and all that kind of stuff. Then the next day comes, and my mother say, "Right, get ready for school." "Oh, what do you mean, get ready for school?" So you've got to go to school. I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Yes, you do." I said, "No, you spent 4 years telling me one day I'll go to school. Okay, I've been one day. That's it. Thank you."
My gosh. So you always had this attitude of yours. Okay, I'm not surprised. That's something you were just born with, clearly. But I love that being sort of outsmarted by a 4-year-old in this case is hilarious, and it just perfectly shows who you are. I mean, you kind of are right, to be fair. And I think I felt very similar about my school days.
But the fact is, just to get serious again, you get to the age of 18 and you have to start making choices in your life. And I mean, one of the first choices is basically what you're going to do after you leave school. Are you going into further education? And
Yeah.
so you have to decide, obviously, part of it will be, again, the choice will be driven by how well you have done in school. Are you very academic? Are you going to go to university? Or do you need to do something more practical? Or can you just not wait to get out of school and maybe start working, get a job?
Yeah.
Or maybe just claim unemployment benefit and play computer games all day and try and live off your parents. Good luck with that, by the way. Don't
But
do it.
that all the way you say it is just like makes it sound so easy. Like, oh yeah, you leave school and now you can decide what to do, and like you have a choice. The thing is that I feel like the lines are really not clear sometimes, because you are still young, first of all. Often you live with your parents, and because your parents were making decisions for you basically your whole life up to that point, sometimes it's very hard to decide if, like, okay, now the choice is yours, or we will keep making the choices for you. And it depends on how great of a relationship you have with your parents. It depends on, what your parents want for you and what you want, and so on and so on. It sort of brings me to another thought that I got while you were speaking, because you said that thing when, like, you can't ask a 4-year-old, like, to what school they want to go. And I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But then sort of brought me to my own experience. And again, it only shows how I'm just not decided on that matter. Because one thing is that when you are, let's say, I don't know, 12 to 15, a teenager, and there are a lot of decisions you are changing from elementary school to high school. We have this thing in Czechia, I'm not sure if it's in other countries, but you go to elementary school from like age of 6 to 15, but that's 9 years. But when you are in your 5th year, you can decide to either continue the elementary school or basically start high school, and then you are going to high school for 8 years. And if you decide to finish the elementary school, then you only have high school for 4 years. And it often goes with like art schools a lot, that you can start, like, for example, you can start ballet school after the 5th year or so on, or with like gymnasiums and stuff like that. And
I
that
should
was
explain
exactly.
that gymnasium in Czech is equivalent to in the UK what we call grammar schools.
Is it
In the
not an
US,
English word?
it is. We would pronounce it gymnasium, and it's a place where you go to do exercises and aerobics and
Right,
all that
okay.
sort of stuff. So
It's
it
my
has
Czech
a
brain.
completely different meaning. So
Right.
gymnasium in Czech translates basically to grammar school in English.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I had no idea. It's my Czech brain. So anyway, so this was basically my case when my father wanted me to go there to this grammar school. And when I think I was 11, and I didn't want to. There was nothing else. Basically, because I was a kid, I was 11 years old. He made the decision for me. I remember he one day came to me and he was like, so you will leave your elementary school, you will go to this grammar school. End of conversation. And I was like, excuse me? And I mean, like, on one hand, obviously I was a kid. On the other, and that might be just my personality, I knew what I wanted and I knew what I didn't want. And if I wasn't the way I am and being very outspoken and argumentative about things, in my life, I would just be like, yeah, he's my dad. He made a choice. So I will just do as he said, because he knows the best, or I can't talk back to him, and so on and so on. And I would be so miserable for the rest of it. I would be so unhappy. To this day, I think that I would just be so unhappy. And so, because I am who I am, even when I was 11, I went against my father. And basically, it ruined our relationship. But it kind of saved, my future in a way, and my sanity. Then the same thing happened after elementary school when I was going to high school, because he, again, was like, you will go to grammar school. I was like, no, I want to do art. I want to go to art school. And that's what ended up happening. But that's just because I really thought about it. And so that depends on your personality. But again, I really don't know what's my opinion at the end of the day, because on one hand, this experience of mine was terrible, and I'm glad I managed to have my own choice. But on the other hand, sometimes, even now, like I'm 21, and sometimes I'm like, I really want someone to tell me what to do, but not decide for me. It's just like, like me talking about, I wish I could do that. Could you help me with how to do that, maybe? Which I think you kind of do for me, so I'm grateful for that. But you know what I'm saying. Having my own choice now is also not always the best thing, because it gets overwhelming sometimes.
It does, but you must sort of take on board the idea, the concept of freedom of choice, because in your country particularly, it's something that people have fought for really quite recently. I mean, I come from the UK, where freedom of choice, freedom of speech has been kind of enshrined in our constitution for more than 1,000 years. And it's, one of the oldest free countries in the world. But for instance, in the Czech Republic, your parents possibly, but certainly your grandparents, grew up under a regime where there was not so much choice. A lot of what you did and how your life went was dictated by the state. So freedom of choice is something that is kind of enshrined in human rights.
Obviously, you shouldn't have like your country or like someone above you dictating your life. That's like terrible. That's like the absolutely bare minimum of human rights. But I don't think that's such a deep topic. I don't think we are getting into that here. It's more
No.
like of the like emotional level.
So on that note, the next thing we're going to look at is that when you have lots of choices, big problem, lots of decisions to make. How do you make the right decision? Before we get to that, I just want to say thank you for being here and listening to us and watching, if you are watching. And please leave a like and subscribe, because that helps us enormously. So we're going to look at another online quiz, as we have done before. This one all about how to make decisions. And if you want to do it for yourself, I have put the link in the description to this episode of Life Happens. So let's just have a quick look at it. I'm going to ask Michelle some of these questions and see
Nice.
where we go. I've done the quiz. I know what kind of decision maker I am. So I'm not going to do the whole lot, but I'll just do a couple and see how we go. So you get an idea of how it might help you in making decisions. It could actually be very practically helpful for you. So, Michelle, number one, how would you go about making an important decision between two equally good things? These are your options. 1, I would just flip a coin. 2, I would consider all the pros and cons of each before making a decision. 3, I would ask for everyone's opinions and go with the most popular one. Or 4, I will just try and go with my gut feeling.
Is it wrong to say that like I do all four at the same time in the same situation? Because mind you, I can't make decisions. Like like obviously the big decisions, yeah, that's fine. But like my worst nightmare is having to decide what I want to eat. Because I'm always like, yeah, but I want this, but I also want this, and I can only have one situation. But even for the like more serious situations, I'm like, first of all, what I find so interesting about the coin flip technique is that people are like, yeah, okay, I will flip a coin and like whatever it shows, I will do. But there is this moment when you let's say, like physically, literally, you flip the coin. And while the coin is in the air, that's usually the moment when you realize which option you actually want. And that's connected to the fact that you just took away the choice from yourself. You are like, yeah, this object will decide. But when the object actually is about to decide, you are like, wait, no, I don't want a random object to decide. Like, I want to make the choice. And so what I'm doing is I'm like always like, I will flip a coin when I don't know. And the moment the coin is up, I'm like, oh, I actually know what I want now. So no matter what it shows, I already know what I want. So I think that's a very good trick to use.
So you completely messed up the answer to that, but give me
I
one.
don't have the answer. I don't have the answer.
Here's another one. How do you make simple decisions? I don't think there is such a thing as a simple decision when it comes to Michelle.
Really? Oh, when it comes to me. Okay.
No, wait. I haven't finished the whole question. I've just seen the last part of the question. And after what you just said, dread what your answer is going to be.
Oh, my goodness.
How do you make simple decisions like what to have for lunch? 1, I have a set routine to minimize the amount of decisions I need to make.
I wish.
2, I pretty much do things at random or choose whatever is most convenient. 3, I will ask for people's advice and recommendations and go based on that. Or 4, this usually isn't a problem because I just go with what I feel like and what I actually want.
I was just about to say that the way it usually goes for me is that I will ask someone, if I'm like with my friend, I'm like, what do you think I should have? Or like with my mom, like, what dress do you think I should wear? And they give me their opinion. They're like, oh, you should definitely do this. And I'm like, interesting. I will do the other thing. And I'm not sure what's wrong with me in this way. If like I want to go against people, or I just don't know. But maybe it's the coin flip theory, that when someone decides for you, you suddenly realize what you actually want. So that's how it usually goes for me. Maybe that's emotional. Maybe you can go with like, I do whatever feels right. I don't know. But there is something certainly wrong with me in that area.
So we'll leave it there. But
let's move on. I don't like it one bit. It makes me feel like a lab rat. So let's move on.
Anyway, I would just say it is actually quite fun to do. I did this quiz to find out what type of decision maker I am. Apparently, I am a logical decision maker. And I actually learned quite early on in my professional life, but maybe not as young as 21, that I'm going to need to make decisions, sometimes quite serious decisions, sometimes quite trivial decisions, but decisions all the way through your life. And you have to have kind of method to do it. And I would strongly recommend against the flipping a coin method. Well, according to the quiz, I go down the logical route, which
of course you do.
I analyze.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
All the possibilities.
Which just literally makes me question, how are we able to work together or just like even talk to each other? Because I'm sure I'm the emotional one, just based on what I just said. I think it's very clear. How did we put a podcast together with so many decisions? I have no idea.
All right, my question to you then now is, do more options, or should I say, does having more options mean more freedom or just more stress, or both?
I think I was just about to say that. I think it's both. Because it definitely is more freedom. Like, obviously, because you can decide exactly what you want and not make the decision of like, okay, which one of these two is slightly better? But you can design your situation or your answer exactly to how you feel. I mean, most of the time, like choosing a job or stuff like that. And you can literally design it and then look for the right answer for you. So it's definitely more freedom, 100%. But it's also more stress, because I think it's very easy to overthink it. And it's very easy to be like, so how my life will look like if I decide to be a farmer, or how it will look like if I have like 9 to 5 office job. And then you have to make so many smaller decisions, like, do I want to work outside? Do I want to work in the office? Do I want to travel? Do I want to have more money but longer hours? And so on and so on. So you then have to make so many smaller decisions to have your final answer, which can be very overwhelming, and that can be stressful. So I think it's both.
Yeah, when you're coming to the point of thinking about careers and jobs, there's a lot of things that you have to take on board, and there's a lot of, here's another good word I like, imponderables, things that you cannot actually legislate for, because you might see, oh, I really want to do that job. You see this job advertised, you want to get it, you're desperate to get it, but it's not in your hands. It's the choice of the employer.
Yeah.
So that's an imponderable. But you can put yourself in the best position for jobs because you can study the right things and you know be as good a version of yourself as you can be. You just need to have the tools to make the choice. One of the things I used to say to people that I was teaching, like yourself, about the long term of their life, I used to point out that you're at school for about 15 years and you might hate it, you might like it, but it's giving you a certain structure to your life that you have to follow. You have to get up in the morning, you have to get ready, then you have to go to school. In Czechia, most days, you're probably home by 1:30 or 2 o'clock, which is quite early. I mean, in England, you're lucky to be home by 4. But whatever, there is a certain structure and certain commitments that you have to do every day. But that's 15 years. When you start working, you're going to be working for about 45 years. Now, if you end up doing something that you really hate, and you're doing it from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, that's a long time to be doing something bad. I used to say to people, if you think you don't like school, wait till you get a job that you don't like, because it's going to be horrible. So how do you get a job that you do like? What do you value in a job? And you mentioned a few of the things there. Some people will value money. Some people will value experience. Some people value travel, the perks that a job can give you. I always would say to people, just boil it down to what gives you the most satisfaction. What to you is fun? And for some people, that might be money. It never was my number one thing. My number
Yeah.
one thing was that whatever I did, I wanted to really enjoy doing, because I'm going to be doing it for a third of my day, at least 8 hours of my day will be devoted to this. So make
Yeah.
sure you're doing something, if possible, that you really like to do. And so that's kind of a way of informing your choice. I think it'll help you. It meant that I would never choose jobs that would leave me stuck tied to a desk for 8 hours a day. That would be a complete anathema to me.
So I'm just like keep thinking how funny it actually is that we have this conversation, because you are the one who already done all of the important choices, or like, most of them. And I'm someone who probably didn't make many of them yet, and it's still somewhere ahead of me, which is kind of scary. But that's the whole point of like this conversation, that I have much more choices than you had, even though your life was a bit different in it, and you made you made your own rules. But it's a generational thing. But my point kind of is, and I want to just throw it out there because I'm not sure if we have answers for it, but I think it will make a very interesting debate. And that's, two simple questions. Would you trade your clarity for my options and my freedom? And would I trade my options for your certainty?
Well, in a way, oversimplifying. I'm not sure I've got clarity at all, but I suppose you reach a stage in your life where you have a certain level of peace with the way things have gone and the way things are going. And,
Yeah.
I'm hoping I've still got plenty of choices that I'm going to need to make decisions about.
My point, sort of to simplify it or to put it like more obvious, like if you could do it all over again, if we just switch position, it's if you were where I am now, having so many options, so many choices to make, but if you decided to do that, you would lose the wisdom of already making these choices. That's what I meant, like for you. And for me, I think it's like if I would sort of give up the excitement of what's ahead of me for having everything figured out and being peaceful about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just about to say that I'd be happy to take on all your options all over again.
Really?
But of course, if you don't, you know, this is the thing about life, in some ways, and I'm not the first person to have said this. It would be great if we could kind of live our lives backwards, because you definitely, when you're older, you definitely know a lot more stuff than you do when you're younger. And it informs your decisions, for one thing, makes decision making a lot easier. And also it kind of brings a certain peace to everything. You're not so stressed about stuff. And when you're younger, because it's like a lot of the decisions you'll make will feel a bit like stepping off a cliff and hoping that somebody's going to be there to catch you. So there is that element of sort of uncertainty, but I think also excitement. So yeah, I'd do it all over again. And of course, I'd love to go and do it all over again, knowing what I know now. But that's not
In an
possible.
ideal
If I do it all
situation.
over again, I'd start again. I always think, oh, in my next life, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do that and that and that. But of course, that's kind of assuming that in your next life, you can remember your past life. And not many of us have that ability.
And also that you will be reborn as a human.
Well, that's true. It's debatable whether I was born as a human in the first place. But yeah, so I talk about, if I come back, I would do this and I would do that. Well, actually, that's kind of how I've gone through all my life. I've sort of been doing something. And I think, my next life, I'll come back and I'll do this. And wait a minute, I'm still in this life. Let's go and do it now. So that's often how I've
That's
made my
great.
choices. And I probably would say, don't try this at home, kids, because it's not for everyone. But I
was just about to say that I would love to know how to do that. So you're saying I shouldn't?
I don't know, but I'll help you if you want to. So, but your that's my answer to those questions. What about you? Would you trade your options for my certainty?
I don't know. Like, genuinely, I don't know. Because, the idea of having everything sort of like knowing the answers, like now I wonder, like, if I will ever have kids, if I will find a husband, what job I will have, what I will be enjoying in like 20 years, and so on and so on. And having all of these answers is so calming in a sense, because I'm someone who literally worries about her future every single day. And the idea of having one single day when I wouldn't have to worry and I would see the answers, like, oh yeah, Michelle R. Williams CV, or like, memoir or whatever. And just like the fact that I could see that and be like, okay, so this will happen to me, this will happen to me, this will be, I don't know, the love of my life, blah, blah, blah. That would be great. But on the other hand, I feel like if someone handed me a clear path today, this piece of paper with my life written on it, I would feel robbed, because there is this excitement about it. There is just like, oh my gosh, I'm just 21, like I can do anything. And sometimes it really helps me, because if I'm, for example, not really motivated to write my book, I'm like, girl, maybe you will be a full-time author one day. But you have to write that book right now, right here. But you don't know. Maybe you will be. And if I had these answers, and if someone told me, oh, no, you will never be an author, that will never happen for you, obviously I wouldn't be writing. And writing is something I enjoy now. If it has future, that's perfect. But if it doesn't, maybe I just don't want to know that at this point.
It's exactly that thing about the excitement of the unknown. And you said that thing about if somebody could hand you a piece of paper with everything that's going to happen on you written down. Well, you know what, that piece of paper, you'd fold it over so that you couldn't actually see what's written on it, and then write a title on that piece of paper to hand to you. Do you know what that title would be?
No.
Spoiler alert. Would you want your life to be spoiler alerted? if that's a phrase.
I mean, you are asking the wrong person, because I'm someone who loves having movies and books spoiled. I don't mind that. Like, if I know how a movie, if I know how a movie or a book ends, I actually enjoy it more, because I'm looking for all the clues of like why it ends that way, especially like, thrillers or like true crime and so on and so on. So I think I'm just not an ideal person to ask that question. But no, I get your point, and it would be so tempting. And if I actually had that piece of paper, I would read it. So I'm glad I don't have that piece of paper.
Actually, now I've said that, there are so many times I can think of in my life where I've just sort of thought to myself, I wish I could just see that little bit into the future to see how this works out. You know, is this going to be the right decision? And you're
Yeah.
just aching, and you're kind of trying everything you can to summon some sort of superpower in order to be able to do that. But you can't. You can't. Life and the universe does not work like that. You actually touched on some very interesting points where you are going to have to make some big decisions in your life that I've probably already made. You talked about career decisions, relationship decisions, all sorts of things to come, but we're getting a bit short on time. Do you know what I think we should do?
What do you think we should do?
I think we should come back next week and talk about relationship decisions and career decisions. I think that could be kind of fun.
Certainly, I really hope that we will figure it out my life. But that's probably not what will happen. But I would still love to have that debate.
Okay, so let's do that. We will be back, and to be continued.
To be
But
continued.
first, don't forget, leave a like and subscribe, and tell your best friend that they need to make a choice to watch or listen to Life Happens.